Today is Friday. I believe it's the 19th of July. Yeah, that's what it is. And I was thinking today about, the history book. Now, I didn't know the history book could get somebody in so much trouble. But the history book, it is a history book, and you can find out about a lot of trouble that's happened over, a period of time in history. And the history began when God created a man from dust and breathed into his nostrils, and he became a living man. And that was Adam. But anyway, we're a lot of years past Adam. I mean, a lot of years past Adam. Because it was a lot of years, you know, that Adam lived. And there was a few more years after that that a flood came to the earth, or the earth was flooded. The flood didn't really just come to the earth. But anyway, there was a flood, and all the people were dead except 8. There was 4 men and 4 women survived that flood. But God had a plan, and He blessed those that were on that boat, and He gave them permission and commanded them to do some things. And I believe they did it. They still had to deal with a devil, the same one that messed with Eve in the garden, and the one that tempted Cain to kill his brother, and the same devil that's messed with every man that's ever lived on the earth. Yeah, there is a devil, folks. I know just because you can't see him that it's hard to believe, but it's a fact. Anyway, I've been looking in the history book, and there's some significant things that happened during history. And one of the most significant things was when a virgin came up pregnant by the Holy Spirit. Now, that was one of the most significant things that came about since the flood. And this man he was quite a man. They likened him unto Moses, and such as that. And Jesus even likened himself unto Solomon, I believe. Yeah, so Jesus did say that a queen came to hear Solomon, and something greater than Solomon was going on back in his day. Because there had never been a child born by a woman. This child wasn't born by a man. Let me get that straight. This child was born by a woman, and the woman was a virgin when she gave birth to the child. And this is a very special child. I mean, I'm not going to try to go into all the ways this child is special. But since we're looking at and talking about Jesus, I'm talking about Jesus was the child. And Jesus died on the cross. They nailed him to it, and he died. They put him in the tomb for about a certain period of time, and then the stone got rolled away, and Jesus was out again. Well, he had commanded some people to wait in Jerusalem until something happened, and it did. And sure enough, when it happened, Peter went to preaching. I mean, if Peter had thought he had ever preached, he didn't know anything about preaching until he started preaching that day. I mean, multitudes, thousands of people became believers. I mean, it was an event in history like unto no other. But there was a man named Paul that got struck blind. He was going to arrest some folks, And I'm reading about this in this history book now, folks. I got the history book, and the history book says that Paul was struck blind on the way to Damascus. Well, he made it to Damascus. And then later on, he made it to Athens. But he was doing something completely different in Athens than what he had planned to do in Damascus. But anyway, let me see how much, how far this is, because we don't want to go too long here. Anyway, in Acts is part of the history book, folks. You'd think did nothing happen after, whoever wrote Acts, but lots of things have happened since Acts. And it's still happening today. But anyway, Paul was a preacher, and he had done started preaching. In other words, he decided he'd better quit killing some folks and started doing something else. And he became a preacher. He was an apostle. And he went to Athens. And you can read in Athens that when he got there, he set up a tent. No, he didn't. He didn't set up a tent. He called everybody to the football stadium so he could give them a speech and talk about a book. No, that wasn't what he did either. But he did go to town, he looked around, and then he found a place where there was a lot of talking going on. And that's when Paul decided that it was a good time to preach. And he started off, men of Athens. So he wasn't talking to the men of the church. And he didn't open up a book and said, turn to, John 1:1, and we're going to read and find out something. No, Paul was not that kind of preacher. But Paul showed up to that town and he said, men of Athens. He said, I observe that you are very religious, very religious. And he was examining some things that they were worshiping, and he found some things, to talk about. And then he wants to talk about God. Now, this is just chapter 17, verse 24. Now, you do know that Paul met Jesus. God allowed Paul to meet Jesus and to get some very special revelation. But Paul here is in Athens, and he's not talking about Jesus. In verse 17, he's talking about the God who made the world and all things in it. He is Lord of heaven and earth and does not dwell in temples made with hands. Now, I don't know how many folks have built temples all over the world and called it God's house, and they run to it, certain days, certain times, to meet God. Well, I'm not going to those places, although I might have a meeting at the house, and somebody can come up here and we'll talk about God. But anyway, Paul said he is neither is he served by human hands, because he doesn't need anything, since he himself gives to all life and breath and all things. And he made from one every nation of mankind to live on the face of the earth, and he determined and appointed their times and the boundaries of their habitations. Now, I don't think things have changed that much, folks. I think God is still doing some things, and some people need to figure out that they should seek God, and perhaps that they should grope for him, but he's not far from each of us, for in him we live, move, and exist. Anyway, if you people are still believing that you need to follow Jesus, if you can find where Paul told these folks in Athens to follow Jesus, would you please comment on this video? Because I want to see where you found in this history book where Paul or Peter told anyone to follow Jesus. Thank you very much.